Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Fearless Female podcast. I am so delighted you are here. And again, if you have listened to any of the previous episodes, I know there are only 2 so far, but if you have listened to those, I really, really appreciate it. If you are watching on the YouTube or if you see this on Instagram, you'll see that I have my Starbucks cup in front of me. And for anybody who voted for Costa in the poll yesterday, we cannot be friends. I'm only joking. Everybody knows that. I think Starbucks for me is now more a personality rather than anything because, let's be honest, there are absolutely nicer coffees out there. But I mean, the Starbucks is just a vibe. But as I said, thank you so much for being here and listening. I am bringing you another really valuable episode today, diving into some things around female health. Now, this is an area and a topic that I have been getting more clued up on, reading into more. I've done excessive courses around it. I have completed different mentorships on it. And I'm always kind of researching and continuing to grow in this field because it's something that I really think we were not given the education obviously around it in school. We have, as females, quite limited knowledge around female health and physiology, which is crazy in itself. But it's so important because so many of these issues and so many of these things are just important for us to know ourselves, for our own health, and knowing how to navigate that ourselves. So we will be diving into some female health issues today, and you're going to get a lot out of this because trust me, when I go through some of the things I will today, you'll probably sit there and think, what? I did not know that. And that's exactly how I felt when I started getting into more of the female health side of things. So before I jump into it, how are we all? It is Sunday, hopefully when this gets released, but just check in with yourself. How are you feeling? Because I know we're coming into the middle of November. This is the time of year where it gets difficult. A lot of you are going to work in the dark. You're coming home in the dark. It's a lot harder to kind of get yourself going and keep yourself going. But one thing I will say is I have noticed this year with non-clients, so, you know, people in general and also my clients, is that November seems to be the new January, which is amazing because I feel like people are finally realising that you don't have to wait until January to start working towards your goals or working towards anything you want to work towards or just showing up for yourself. And when you kind of start now, even if it is the middle of November, why not build those habits and build those foundations going into Christmas so that you can feel incredible, you know, across the Christmas period and then be ready in January. You don't have to do all the groundwork come January 1st. You have all the foundations laid. You're already feeling really good. The festive period acts as a little natural, you know, diet break and break for you anyway. And then once January comes, you're ready to go again. So I absolutely love that the narrative has started to change, that it's not just let's wait until, you know, that first weekend in January when all the food and the drinking is over. I think people are really getting more clued into the fact that there is no perfect time to start. You can literally start right now. If you're listening to this and you have a certain goal or something that you want to achieve, or you just want to feel a certain way, you just want to feel a little bit better in yourself, start today. And it doesn't have to mean, you know, getting a coach. It doesn't have to mean doing this, 8, 10, 12 week program. It can just mean doing a few simple little things that are going to drive you forward, because at the end of the day, if you're not doing very much right now to move you forward, any small little thing that's going to move you in that direction is going to make you feel better. It's going to get you seeing results. So little small things that you can do in the next few days, weeks coming up to that festive Christmas period, start today. You don't have to overhaul your whole life. You don't have to, you know, have this all or nothing mindset. Small little things that you can add in that are going to drive you forward. And if you are wondering what those can be, the previous episode that I did talking about little things that you can do right now to drive you forward will help. So if you haven't, go and give a listen to that. But as I said, I hope you're all having a lovely Sunday. And just another thing that I've noticed this week with some of my clients and myself is that when you start to do new things, or if you have decided to maybe start a new business, as one of my clients has done this week, I'll touch on that in a second. But if you are doing something different than what you usually do, or you've made a decision that a big decision that you weren't sure about. And I mentioned this in my email yesterday, if you got that. If you are feeling that uncomfortable feeling, or that feeling of anxiousness or anxiety, or, it's not, you're wondering if it was the right decision, or you're scared, it creates that little bit of fear. Trust me, I have learned over the years that when you feel that feeling, it is typically more than likely a good sign that you are on the right path. Because if you've ever heard the expression, new levels require new devils, that is what that means. So when you kind of move to a new level, when you make that big decision, when you make that investment in yourself or something else, when you change course or whatever it may be, moving to that next level and moving out of the comfortable into the uncomfortable, it's going to feel scary. You're going to have all these new feelings. You're going to have the feelings of overwhelm. You're going to have the feelings of, is this the right decision? You're going to question yourself. You're going to feel the fear. And what I've said to my clients, because I've had a few of them now this week who have made, big decisions, big life decisions, who I've said, just lean into that feeling, because it is a sure sign that you are absolutely on the right track, and you just need to push through. You need to keep going. You need to lean into it and know that it will work out. So a few of my clients have, one of them, as I said, has started a new business, which I'm sure in the new year I might get her on as a guest, because honestly, the transformation that she has made just across the board has been sensational. She has decided to go for a goal, which when she was at my event last year, could barely even say out loud because she felt really silly about saying it. That goal is now more than within reach, and it's nothing to do with a photo shoot or anything like that, even though she is also doing a photo shoot now in a few weeks, which was another massive goal. But this goal is something incredible, and as I said, it's within reach. She has now decided to open and start her new business. So she did a course because she wanted to do something for herself, and the career that she's in, yes, she enjoys it. She works a lot of shifts. It's an incredible career, but she knows that she said to me, her passion, she may take a pay cut, she may have to change a lot of things, but this is where her passion is. And it's just, I can't describe the sense of pride I had when she told me this week that she was going to just go for it and start the new business, and just lean into that fear, because I think a lot of the time what holds us back is what other people are going to think. And I think that's one of the big things that was holding her back. But the level of confidence that she has now developed and has kind of acquired is just incredible to see. So if you are thinking, oh, was that the right decision? Should I do this? Should I not? Oh, that scares me. Oh God, that's something I'd never do. Trust me, lean into that feeling and you will progress and grow more than you believe, because we all know that when you are comfortable, you're not going to change, you're not going to grow, you're not going to progress. You have to push yourself into those uncomfortable settings to do that. And that's myself included, being completely honest. Running your own business, growing your own business, it's difficult. Absolutely rewarding, but it is difficult, and it means getting to those new levels. It means investing more money. It means hiring more coaches. It means doing more courses, doing more mentorships. Well, for me anyway, because I don't just want my business to stay on this stagnant line. I want to continue to improve, and for myself and for my clients, I want to give them the best service. I want to be so knowledgeable that I know how to help them specifically with different areas. I want to have a program in place that suits all of my clients. I want to grow the business, and as I said, to do that you need to continue to invest. You need to keep moving to those next levels, and when you do that, you do get those feelings of, oh my goodness, was that the right move? That's sometimes if it comes down to money. Was that a lot of money? Did I make the right choice? Did I invest that? And you just have to trust that it will. And when you do that, when you make those big leaps, it pushes you to be better, it pushes you to want to make it work. So it is this little kind of cycle of, making the leap, making the investment, but it pushes you to subconsciously make it work as well. So that is all I want to say on that. If you are feeling that kind of uncomfortable feeling or anxiety after making maybe a choice or some decision, or maybe you're worrying or deciding to do something, lean into it, and as cheesy as the saying goes, feel the fear and do it anyway. But let's jump into today's episode. So sorry guys, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. So I said I am going to keep these episodes definitely under the half hour mark where possible, so let's get stuck in. So female health, we're going to touch firstly on the menstrual cycle. Now, this is something that if you are anything like me, and I think most females, and as I've been delivering these lectures as part of my masterclasses for coaches and also for other coaches' clients, this is something that I've noticed massively with the majority of females. We've been brought up through school, through life in general, with very little knowledge of our menstrual cycle. So if you're anything like me, in school you get taught basically that you're going to have a period every month, you're going to bleed for a few days, you're going to have cramps, and yeah, that's it. Like, genuinely, that is more or less it. We learn that, if you have a period, obviously you are not pregnant, and then vice versa. And for me, and I think, as I said, a lot of other girls, that's kind of, it when it comes to the menstrual cycle and our periods. But when you know how important your menstrual cycle is, like, everything changes. So our menstrual cycle is actually one of our vital signs. So it was put into a publication in 2015 that it's up there as one of your vital signs. So along with your kind of blood pressure, your heart rate, it is such a good indication for females as to what is going on with their general health. So consider this as like your monthly report card, is what they like to refer to it as. So when you are so in tune with your own cycle, your own menstrual cycle, what's going on in each stage of the month, what's going on kind of around your period, your actual period, if there's something off or you notice something a little bit different, it's an indicator that something elsewhere is maybe going on. So when you learn a lot about this stuff, and as I teach my clients as well, everything in our bodies is related. So from, gut health, your menstrual cycle, hormone health, brain health, everything inside us is related. So usually if something is not going right with one area, it's going to have an onset effect on the other. So our menstrual cycle is super important. Now, we menstruate because, we menstruate because obviously the egg gets released. We all know that from like sex ed class. But the most important thing about our menstrual cycle is ovulation. So again, growing up, we used to hear about ovulation, but I'm included in this as well. We used to think we don't have to worry about that because, I don't want to get pregnant yet. I don't need to know if I'm ovulating. It's not a big deal. We don't need to know anything about that. And this is so far from the truth. That ovulation is literally the most important thing about our cycle. So when we ovulate, we produce our main hormones, estrogen and progesterone. And for females, these are so important for health now, but also health in the future. So as we know, when we get older, our hormones decline. Estrogen declines, and that is just, the natural part of being a female. Things decline as you get older. But we can see it as kind of bank those hormones for later life and later health. So estrogen we need for so many important things. I'm going to get into that in a little bit more detail. But estrogen is to us what testosterone is to males. So really important for everyday health. We need it for lean muscle mass. It's our anabolic hormone. It can help prevent against like cardiovascular disease. It can help prevent against things like anxiety, depression when we're older. It can also help with building up bone density health as well. So when we ovulate every month, when we have a healthy ovulation, we're producing that estrogen for health now, but also banking it for later on in life as well, which is really, really important. Same with progesterone. So progesterone is another hormone that we produce when we ovulate, and it kind of is known as like our calming hormone, like our caretaker. So, and it's such an important hormone for our health, and a lot of us are sometimes either not producing enough progesterone, not producing enough progesterone, which makes us estrogen dominant sometimes, and that's where we can see a lot of symptoms with PMS, like sore breasts, migraines, all of those symptoms that you usually experience and that kind of run up to your period. But going back to ovulation, it is like the MVP of your menstrual cycle, and we should be having healthy ovulations every month in order to produce these hormones that we need for health. So how do we know if we are ovulating? Now, I'm not going to get into it in this episode. This is a training that I do with, as I said, my girls and other coaches' clients within my masterclasses. But to know if we're ovulating, I know there are ovulation sticks, but they're not that accurate, because when we're using those luteinizing hormones, so LH, that needs to rise for ovulation to happen, it can actually spike up to 40 hours before. So even if you use the sticks and, it's telling you that you are ovulating, it's just showing you that everything is basically in place for ovulation to happen. But for us to actually know if we have had a healthy ovulation that month, we need to be looking at things like temperature rises. So after you ovulate, your temperature will increase until your next period, and that's where you probably may have heard of things like the symptothermal method. So if any of you use apps like Natural Cycles to track your menstrual cycle, it'll get you to take your temperature every morning, and when you have a consistent temperature rise after ovulation, it's a really good sign that obviously you've ovulated. And also looking into things like cervical mucus. So again, this is something that so many girls are not afraid to talk about, but it's one of those things that nobody wants to talk about. What's your cervical mucus like? But this is such a normal thing. And again, growing up, we used to probably, like, if you were anything like me, you used to think there was something wrong with you, because what the hell is this? I was told that I was just going to have a period once a month. I would deal with that, but then you're thinking, what the hell else is this? And cervical mucus is so normal. Not only so normal, but a good sign that you are healthy. So do not freak out if you have cervical mucus throughout the month. And as I said, I'm not going to get into the types or when it comes or what it should be like. If you are interested in more of this, I absolutely will go into it in other episodes, and I will have something coming in the new year as well, to go more into this for people who want to learn more. But knowing if you have ovulated goes with temperature, cervical mucus, but you can also look at things like hunger levels. So when you ovulate, your metabolic rate is going to increase because obviously your temperature increases, so that's going to increase hunger by a little bit as well. So after you ovulate, you will be hungrier. Cravings will be a little bit higher as well. So that's sometimes when between ovulation and your period, you're going to feel a little bit hungrier because metabolic rate is higher. So if you get to your period and all of a sudden hunger isn't as high, it's a good sign as well to see, to know that you more than likely ovulated. But as I said, we're not going to get into testing it. Just know that ovulation is so important for your health, and that's what we want to be kind of looking at, not just for when you want to get pregnant, but across the board for overall health. Now, I'm just looking at my notes here because I don't want to go on tangents, which I usually do. So another thing I want to touch on is the HPG axis. So this is the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, a bit of a mouthful, or you might see it as HPO axis. And this is basically the axis that regulates our menstrual cycle. Now, why do I want to tell you about this? Because it shows you that our menstrual cycle starts in our brain. Like a lot of things in our body, things start in the brain. So this is really important because if you are, under severe stress, is a big one. If you are under eating, if you are overtraining, if you even are emotionally stressed, you will potentially have an onset effect on your menstrual cycle and its kind of ability to work efficiently and effectively. So the brain basically gives these little signals down to your pituitary gland. It then releases a hormone called GnRH. It gives little signals down to release luteinizing hormone and FSH, follicular stimulating hormone. Some of these things are such a mouthful. And they then tell your ovaries to either release estrogen or progesterone, and it goes in this kind of loop. If I make this a reel or on YouTube, I'll try and have little graphics so you can kind of get an idea of it. But if you just Google HPG axis, you'll see it. And as I said, this is really important because it just shows us how much of an impact stress and our brain can have on our menstrual cycle. So I think, a lot of you may have experienced this before, but when you are in high levels of stress, and I mean, chronic stress, if you are chronically stressed all of the time, and whether that be emotionally, with work, whatever it may be that is causing you to be in this constant state of fight or flight and chronic stress, that's going to have a kind of down pass impact on your menstrual cycle. So knowing that is really important because it's also really closely linked with our HPA axis, and that's the axis that controls our stress response. So when you are releasing a lot of cortisol because you are highly stressed, that's going to put a lot of pressure on your adrenal glands, and that is then going to signal to your HPG axis, okay, we need this energy. She's clearly stressed, we need to pump out all this cortisol to deal with this, so you're not going to get the energy that you need to basically regulate your menstrual cycle. And also it's going to tell your brain that, okay, she is in, a high state of stress. She's in no way to be able to carry a baby. And so it shuts down that pathway of allowing us to ovulate. So just something to, to keep in mind, that when you are highly stressed, and are maybe chronically stressed or in that fight or flight all of the time, it's going to have an impact on your menstrual cycle, as well being, undernourished, so undereating, overtraining, all of those things. And another thing to note there is that our menstrual cycle, so there is a hormone, I believe, called kisspeptin, that relies a lot on carbohydrates, and so does luteinizing hormone, which I mentioned earlier, which it needs to be at a certain level for us to ovulate. They rely a lot on carbohydrates. So even if our, calorie amount is at a good place, if we're not eating enough carbs, that can definitely also have an impact on our menstrual cycle. So just things to keep in mind. And this is where a lot of the differences between men and women come in. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Obviously we are not just small men. It's quite obvious that we have a lot more going on. We are generally smaller. We have lower levels of lean body mass, and we're structurally different. We have a lot more hormones at play. And that's why we don't respond to a lot of the protocols that men do. And this is sometimes where you see in the fitness industry where you'll have males, maybe you'll see that they've done a 12-week transformation, and they'll look absolutely like dick skin shredded, excuse my language, but they'll be so shredded in maybe 12 weeks. And a lot of girls will look on that, and I've had girls before saying, how can they get into that condition in 12 weeks? And we potentially can't, and it's because we have a lot more at play. We don't respond to dieting as easily as males do. And an example of this is, so our hormone leptin is basically our regulator of our metabolic rate, we'll say. So leptin, when you have a 5-day aggressive diet, will decrease by 50% for males. But for females, that will decrease 20% quicker. So it means our metabolic rate will drop 20% quicker, which means we're not going to respond to dieting as easily. And this is where we need to have different protocols in place. So whether that mean, having maybe higher days of carbs and lower days of carbs, whether that means having more frequent refeeds, whether that means having more frequent diet breaks, whatever protocols your coach is using for you or you're using for yourself, we need to make sure that our kind of carb levels are just being replenished when we're in those states of severe dieting. Now, I'm not saying that we cannot get to those lower levels of body fat. We absolutely can, but we will need different protocols in order to get there. We'll probably need longer to get there, and once we're there, we can't stay there for a long time. We all know that once you get, super shredded, super lean, it's not maintainable. Because again, our bodies as females will want to upregulate and downregulate whatever it has to in order to keep us at a decent percent of body fat. Now, does that mean when you get super lean, you just have to put on loads of fat again? Absolutely not. There is, a nice percentage of body fat that we can sit comfortably at while still achieving a really nice physique. And we're just different to males, as I said. So another tangent I went on there, but just to show the difference between male and female, because we don't respond as well sometimes to certain protocols. And when we're in that high level of stress, it will stop ovulation. And we want healthy ovulation every month in order to produce the hormones that we need. So moving on very slightly. Now, the different phases of your cycle. So you may have heard about these before, you may not. And I'm going to go through them briefly now. So when you have your menstrual cycle, in a textbook, you'll see that it'll say 28 days in most textbooks, but any kind of, quote unquote normal cycle will be from 23 days to 35 days. So anything kind of between those is considered a normal cycle. Now, when you start your period, that is day 1 of your cycle, and kind of will say again, a normal bleed is anything from 2 days to 7 days. Now, you want to also be looking at the quality of your bleed. And apologies for any boys listening in, I'm unsure if there will be, but we're going to be talking about blood and periods, because I feel like, again, even when I do some of these lectures, there's still that not taboo, it's not taboo at all, but people get a bit, I suppose, cringe when we're talking about bodily fluids, and it's just a natural thing. And this is a tangent again, but it's one of those as well where I will ask my girls to fill in a daily tracker. I'll ask them to tell me what day of their cycle they're on. I'll ask them to tell me how many times they've been to the bathroom, and I'll also ask them to tell me what their poo's like. Some of them literally will look at me and say, absolutely not, I'm not telling you what my poo's like, and that's absolutely fine. Not everybody wants to share that information, but I feel like the more I know as a coach, the better. And secondly, I've no barriers when it comes to talking about that stuff. But anyway, when you're looking at your period, anything from 2 to 7 days, but also the quality of it. So if you're having, a 2-day period and it's really, really light and we'll say scanty, that's, a little signal, I suppose, that maybe you're not producing enough estrogen. And then on the other side of things, if you're having a 7-day period that's really long, really, really heavy, and you have a lot of symptoms coming with it, like migraines, cramps, really, really sore back pain, breast pain, that can be a signal as well that you're producing maybe either too much estrogen or you're not producing enough progesterone to be able to deal with the amount of estrogen you have. Now, again, I'm not going to get into why that may be in this episode, because I do want to keep it short and sharp, but I potentially will get into that in another episode. Or, as I said, if you are looking to learn more about this, this is kind of what I go through with my girls. I teach it on some of my masterclasses. At the minute, they are just for coaches and other clients. However, I may bring out something in the new year that will, give you more information on all of this stuff without having to sign up for coaching. So more to come on that. But looking at the quality of your bleed, so once we come out of our period or menses, whatever you want to call it, we go into then our follicular phase. So this is like the first half of your period, kind of, we'll say roughly in around that second week of your, if we're going on like a 28-day cycle, just for easiness, that kind of second week of your 28-day cycle. Now, this is our phase where we are feeling like top notch, and just to preface that as well, not every single girl, we are all completely different. We will experience different symptoms. We are not a textbook, so these are things that we will typically be experiencing. But if you experience something different, that's fine. We are all experiencing different things, and this is why so much of the research in the kind of sports and fitness world is done on males, because our women have so much more at play. It's very hard to do a controlled study on females when we're experiencing different things. So if you don't experience this after your period, then that's okay. But we will typically be feeling our best coming out of our period into that follicular phase right up to ovulation. So this is where estrogen is on the rise. We are feeling good. Estrogen, I like to describe it as like our Beyonce hormone. We're feeling ourselves. We're feeling confident. This is where in your training, so from a training perspective, you want to be going for your PBs. You're going to be feeling stronger. You're going to be recovering better. You're also going to be able to use carbs a lot better in this phase. So like that, energy is going to be higher for your training. Recovery is going to be better, and all around you're just feeling good. Okay, as I said, right up to ovulation. So ovulation, estrogen spikes. And with the rise in estrogen, it can have an impact on our kidney receptors. So this is sometimes when around ovulation, you might find that you're a little bit more watery, you're holding a little bit more water. But there's absolutely, nothing wrong with that. It's just sometimes, and I said, oh my girls, we all know the scales fluctuate throughout the month, and when you see the hormones on a menstrual cycle diagram and they're waving throughout the months, it's no wonder that the scales are fluctuating. How could we expect the scales to stay the same when we're having that up and down of hormones throughout the month? So in around ovulation, that kind of midway point, usually, and again, that's going to vary, that is where you may be retaining a little bit more water, and the scales may fluctuate a little bit. Now, again, that doesn't happen for everyone. Some girls will maybe feel a little bit of cramping around ovulation. Some girls won't. And as I said, everybody is different. Now, after ovulation, going into the luteal phase. So this is where estrogen will kind of decline and progesterone will come in to potentially take over. If you are producing, good amounts of it, it will come in to take over. But this is usually where a lot of the PMS symptoms will happen. So that kind of like 5 to 7 days before your bleed. This is where you're usually going to feel most of those symptoms, like maybe, cravings. You might be a little bit emotional, cramping. We all know those symptoms leading up to our period. And this is where progesterone is kind of spiked, but estrogen spikes along with it again just before your period. So we can find that we have those PMS symptoms. Now, in this luteal phase, and I don't know if some of you have noticed this or not, maybe you have, but in the luteal phase, this is maybe where you're not going to feel as strong in the gym. So maybe you've gone in some weeks and you've noticed that your lifts aren't progressing or you're not recovering as quick. And this is because in this phase, we can't access our glycogen stores as we could in the follicular phase. So, energy is a little bit lower, especially for recovery and things like that as well. We do use fats better in this phase. So even getting in some healthy fats, now you should be getting those in across the board, but getting in some healthy fats, especially kind of after ovulation coming up to your period, is going to help with PMS symptoms, with reducing inflammation. But also we do use them, as I said, better in this phase. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to be using carbohydrates at all, or you're not going to be able to have energy for training. And that's one thing that I tell my girls. Yes, we can look at all these things from a textbook kind of symptom approach, but if you go in with the mindset of, I'm in my luteal phase, the session isn't going to be as good, well, guess what's going to happen? The session isn't going to be as good. So making sure that you're going in and giving your session your all, but if those numbers aren't, increasing, or if you're not feeling your best, then at least you have an idea as to why. You can think, okay, look, I'm in my luteal phase. That makes sense. But yeah, in this phase, this is where you're going to find most symptoms. We can't access glucose as much, so sometimes in this kind of phase, even looking at things like pre and post workout can be a little bit more important. So making sure you have a good kind of quick carb before your training to make sure there's kind of glucose in the bloodstream for you to use during your training, and then after as well, that kind of like post workout window will be a little bit more important as well. So getting kind of carbs in there, protein in there to help with recovery. So yeah, those are kind of the main 4 phases and what you will potentially be feeling in those. I know I haven't gone into a massive amount of detail, but we can absolutely do other episodes on this if people are interested or have questions, and I can dig into that a little bit more. So one other thing, and I know when I say this, some of you are going to sit there and say, absolutely no way, she is talking so much rubbish. No, your period should not be extremely painful. And I know what you're thinking. What is she talking about? I die off every month when mine comes. I just want to, lie in bed and cry. And I get that. I've been there. But we've just been, brought up to believe, and also through, social media and the movies as well, and that kind of narrative of, when a girl has her period, she's dying with cramps and she wants all the chocolate and just wants to hide away. And I absolutely get it, trust me. But if you are experiencing, severe amounts of pain with your period, and so much so that you need to take days off work, or it's making you feel sick, or you have to, you're heavily reliant on what you call them, I can't even think of the word, paracetamols and ibuprofen. Sorry, I couldn't think of the name. If you're heavily reliant on those, and as I said, you're getting real pain and back pain, and it's affecting your everyday life, we'll say, then that is not normal. Now, it's common, but it's not normal. We've just been made to think that this is just normal, and this is just something that we have to accept. It's not. So if you are having lots of pain, there's lots of kind of easy fixes that this is probably because of, and a big one of them is kind of inflammation. So if you can reduce inflammation in general, that's going to help massively. Now, things to reduce inflammation, a big one, as I said from the beginning, is stress. And I have a whole training on this that I did with the girls, managing hormones with, stress management. If you can bring your stress levels down and your cortisol levels down and just reduce that kind of overall inflammation in that perspective, that's going to have a big impact. So adding things in like journaling, taking some time for yourself, doing some breath work during the day, taking time in the day to just reflect, just taking down those stress levels where and when possible, and making sure that you're not in that constant kind of state of fight or flight. And again, I'll do a whole other episode, I suppose, on managing stress and ways that we can do that, because it's so important for hormonal balance and keeping that those stress levels down, and not being in that kind of state of fight or flight. So managing stress is a big one. Another one is getting in some healthy fats to your diet. So a lot of us, if not most of us, are very much deficient in omega-3. So things like oily fish, salmon, I know mackerel and things, a lot of us don't like, but if you can get salmon in, even just healthy fats in general, so nuts, seeds, avocados, egg yolks, if you're even getting in things like dark chocolate, that's like 85% plus. And I actually mentioned there was a study done on this, between having dark chocolate, ibuprofen, and I think the other one was coconut water, to reduce the signs of cramping before your period. And it actually came out, the results, that dark chocolate was actually nearly as efficient as ibuprofen. And in the study, they only used, I think, 70% dark chocolate, so 30 grams of that. But imagine if you have 85% plus, and that's kind of the usual one I go for. Now, I know it's not to everyone's taste. You do get used to it, I promise. But adding things like dark chocolate, it's high in magnesium as well, which is another supplement I'm going to chat about in a second. So beneficial for overall health, but also female health, and kind of helping with PMS symptoms and reproductive health as well. So getting in those healthy fats is going to be another way to reduce inflammation. And then we have supplements as well. So getting yourself a good omega-3. And I don't mean one that is, I know the ones you can get in, the likes of Superdrug or whatever, that are like tablet form, and they're maybe like $1.99. Invest in a good omega-3. A good one to go for is Now Foods. Anything Now Foods is usually really good quality, and they're not that expensive. You can get them on Amazon, or iHerb if you're in, where I am, Qatar or Dubai or anywhere. But Now Foods is a good one. So they're ultra omega-3. I think it's maybe like £17 for a huge tub. So investing in a good omega-3. And then, as I mentioned, magnesium and zinc. So 2 supplements that are, again, minerals that most of us are deficient in because of lots of reasons. Because of the quality of our food isn't where it used to be. The quality of the soil isn't what it used to be. So those minerals are depleted. And also, when we're highly stressed, your adrenals will also dump out magnesium. So your body will just get rid of magnesium. So we want to replenish that. So magnesium glycinate is the one that's going to be best absorbed. Now, there's lots of different types of magnesium they can help with different things. There's ones to help you relax. There's ones to help you go to the bathroom. There's lots of ones. But magnesium glycinate, if you add in 300 milligrams of that, take it at night time before bed as well. It's going to help with your sleep. It's going to help with your nervous system, and it's going to help with all those processes in the body. And then zinc as well. So I think if you go for a zinc, I think it's either zinc glycinate or zinc biglycinate as well. So 30 milligrams of that. Take it with your magnesium, an hour before bed, and it's going to help with sleep as well, which in turn is going to help with stress. So reducing inflammation is going to be the big one to help with severe PMS symptoms. And the main one then, your food. So if you are having highly processed food all the time, if you are, not getting enough protein in, if you're not having, 3 to 4 meals throughout the day, spaced nice and evenly, it's going to have an impact on like hormonal balance and things like that. But the big one is kind of processed food. So using the 80-20 rule where possible, just making sure that most of your food is from whole food sources, and then using that kind of 20% for the more processed things that you want. But reducing kind of processed foods is going to have a massive impact on reducing inflammation in general as well, and they will help with PMS symptoms. Now, what I will say is your follicles also take 100 days to mature, which means things that, say you do all these things, you're eating well, you're reducing stress, and you get a period next month and you're like, Shannon, what are you talking about? I've done all these things and I am still in severe pain. I'm not seeing any differences. You have to give it at least 3 months, okay? Because it takes those follicles 100 days to mature. So the period that you're going to have, this month, that is the result of things that you've been doing 3 months ago. So when it comes to hormones in our body, things happen quite slowly. So don't be expecting, like everything, don't be expecting things to happen overnight. Now, that's not the only thing that affects PMS. Obviously, if we have severe symptoms, it can also be signs of things like PCOS, endometriosis. It could be a sign that just your you're low in a certain vitamin or mineral. It could be a sign that something is that there's certain issues going on with your thyroid. Lots of different reasons as to why your periods maybe aren't regular or are extremely painful. But the main one that you can start looking into right now is reducing inflammation. So that is a thing that you can start doing from this week, is introducing more healthy fats, looking at your foods, reducing stress, and adding in those supplements. So I hope that has helped. Now, moving on, I'm not sure what time we are. If this has gone over time and it's really long, I might cut this into 2 episodes, but I will see. Moving on to the pill, and again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because the pill is such a massive topic and something that is, I think, becoming even more prevalent in kind of research, and more people are talking about it and the effects of it, and if it's quote unquote good, if it's bad, things like that. So there's still so much research to be done on it, but I just wanted to touch on it because, number one, I in no way have an issue with the pill. I was on it for years. I was put on it originally for my skin when I was 14, and this is where the issue, I think, lies. So we don't get the information around the pill that we should before being put on it. And when the pill was developed, I think in the 1950s, by, what's her name? I think Margaret Sanger, I'm going to say. Anyway, we don't need a history lesson on it. But when it was developed, obviously, it was another move towards women's rights, which was incredible because it gave women the control over their reproductive rights. It was and it still is an easy and effective way of contraception. Absolutely. I'm not taking away from that. But if you are being put on it for reasons other than contraception, because that's sometimes the general consensus nowadays, is that you go in with, for example, myself, skin issues, you go in with, really bad period pain, you go in with irregular periods, and the thing that the GP usually does is give you the pill because it is going to regulate symptoms, it is going to reduce PMS symptoms, it is going to help your skin, which it did for me. And I know at that age, I would have done anything. I didn't, if someone had told me probably, the risks and whatever, would I have not wanted to go on it if it was going to help my skin? I don't know, probably not, because at that age, what age was I, 14, 15, my face was covered in acne, my back was covered in acne, and I just wanted rid of it. It was awful. So I do know that you will do anything to just get rid of things like acne, but again, I think the education that we have around the pill just needs to be a little bit better. So basically, when you take the contraceptive pill, what it does is it shuts down that HPG axis that I was talking about in the beginning. So basically, it cuts off that pathway between your brain and your ovaries to tell them to produce the hormones that we need. So obviously, we're not then naturally producing those hormones, and that in itself obviously can lead to issues with things like anxiety, because that hormone progesterone, that's our kind of, as I said, our caretaking hormone. So when we're not producing that, we can maybe experience things like more anxiety, things like that. It's also, when you're on the pill, it does deplete us of a lot of our vitamins and minerals as well. So making sure that if you are on it, you are getting, supplementation in to support that. So things like B vitamins, magnesium, zinc that I mentioned earlier, vitamin C, also selenium as well. So selenium, I think, there's a good source of selenium in things like Brazil nuts. So just making sure that you're covering those bases if you are on it. And also knowing that it is, stopping that pathway from your brain to your ovaries, because obviously if you can't ovulate, then you can't get pregnant. But I think we're not really aware of that when we get put on it for different issues. And I was speaking to a few girls that I've been doing the lectures with. A few of them went in with symptoms that their periods were irregular, they were in severe pain. They got put on the pill, and it was only then when they came off it that they dug a little deeper to see what the root cause was, and some of them ended up knowing or finding out that they had endometriosis. So going on the pill is going to reduce symptoms. It is going to put a plaster over things, but it's not getting to the root cause. So that's the issue I have with it, and that's, I think, where the education around it needs to come in, because if you're going on it other than things like are for contraception, when you come off it, those issues are still going to be there. You haven't done anything to eradicate those. So, it may be, as I said, that if you have really painful periods or something's going on there, it could be that you're maybe just not detoxifying your estrogen as well as you could. So what can we do there? That's where we look at things more like gut health, and like that reducing inflammation. So getting to the root cause of things rather than just putting a plaster over it with the pill is definitely something we need to, I think, start doing a little bit more of. But I just wanted to touch on the pill there. And anything around that. So making sure you're kind of, as I said, getting in those vitamins and minerals that you need to replenish any of those that are being depleted by being on birth control. And I think I'm going to leave it there, guys, because I don't want to ramble on too much. But as I said, with all of this stuff to do with female health, menstrual cycle, contraception, even kind of female specific nutrition, because our nutrition does differ a lot as well from that of men. And this is something that, as I said, I go through with all my girls within the masterclasses, and we could go into so many rabbit holes, so many tangents. But I hope you have, number one, enjoyed this, and number two, got something from it. If you have any further questions, if there are topics that you want me to dive a little bit deeper into, please send me a DM. I'm always in my DMs, so send me a DM and I would love to hear from you. I'd also love any feedback you have about this episode. And also, I'm going to put it out there that everybody else does in our podcast. If you have enjoyed this, please share it to your story, tag me so I can see that you've listened, because I just really appreciate it. I mean, I'm not expecting this podcast to in any way go to, top of Apple Podcasts or anything like that. But if we can get some more information out there and get more people listening, and just for me to know that you've watched or listened and enjoyed it, would really mean the world to me. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I hope I have not kept you too long, and I will get seeing you in the next one.